For me, this journey of yin began one afternoon about 15 years ago when I was in downtown Los Angeles and I was coming back from a meeting. And I was at a crosswalk waiting to get the signal to cross the street. And across the way coming towards my direction was a businessman and a younger kid just listening to headphones. And eventually the crosswalk signaled that little white dude on the screen that you see. And so I started walking, as you do. And when I was about a third of the way through the crosswalk, all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I saw this big, large, shiny object racing at me very, very, very fast. And my brain somehow computed that if I was to continue to go forward, I would get hit by this object. If I was to go backwards, I would get hit by the object. If I was to go to either side, I would get hit by the object. So in a moment, my whole nervous system rang the huge alarm bell, jump! And so doing my best Michael Jordan impression, I jumped up into the air, and the object that was coming at me was a car. And so I jumped up as high as I could into the air, and as I was coming down, the car came underneath me, and I hit the windshield on the left side of my body. And I ricocheted off the windshield, went flying through the air, and then somehow miraculously in the middle of this huge intersection in downtown Los Angeles landed on my feet. It just was kind of like, whoa, what just happened? And the businessman and the younger kid ran over to me to make sure that I was doing okay. The lady that was driving the car pulled off to the side. And within about 90 seconds, I heard the sirens. And I found out later that somebody 5 blocks away had heard the collision, that it was so loud, and they immediately called 911. And the businessman and the young kid took me over towards the sidewalk. The emergency vehicles and police all showed up. And I escaped from this accident, with just a couple of scars and bruises and a blown out knee. So my right knee was pretty much blown out. I was able to walk, but every time I would walk, my knee would give out. And so because I didn't break any bones and seemed to be doing relatively okay considering what had happened, I declined going to the hospital. And, my knee continued to bother me for many weeks. And, I dabbled with a little bit of running here and there, nothing super serious, but, I'd like to run every now and then, and that was out of the question. And again, just walking, normally I would, just have this limp where my knee kept giving out. So I started to go see doctors and chiropractors and acupuncturists and physical therapists and everybody I could see. And they all helped me out a little bit, but the issue was still there. Every time I would, think, all right, my knee's getting better, now I can run. I'd run like a quarter of a mile and I couldn't run anymore, so I had to stop. Or if I tried to jump, just for fun, I couldn't jump either. So I was bummed by that. I was bummed that I'd lost this thing that I'd taken for granted, this natural ability for my body to just move. And then I heard about this style of yoga called Yin Yoga. Now, I had been doing power yoga for about a year, and Yin Yoga was completely new to me. I'd never heard about it. And I found out that Yin Yoga is really the opposite of power yoga. So instead of flowing, instead of it being strong and invigorating, it's really the opposite. So the power is the yang, and then the yin is the type of yoga where you basically hold these long, deep floor stretches for about 3 to 5 minutes. And And then as you hold those poses, you put this positive pressure on the connective tissues and the deep fascia. So at around 90 seconds, there's something called a phase change. And the phase change is where you go from the superficial tissues of the body and you start to access the deeper fascia and the connective tissues within the body. So once you hold a deep stretch for 90 seconds, that's really where the magic begins. And so as you put this positive stress on those deeper tissues, the body has what's called fibroblasts. So just like you have osteoblasts that can build your bones to get stronger by lifting weights or doing weight-bearing exercises, the fibroblasts are like the osteoblasts, except they exist within your deep fascia and the connective tissue. So when you hold these deep stretches, those fibroblasts say, all right, we're being stressed out right now, so we got to go to work. So they're like these little construction workers. And so what they do is they draw in something called hyaluronic acid. And hyaluronic acid, you can actually go to a lot of drugstores right now and you can buy skin cream that has hyaluronic acid. And everybody's putting it on their face because it helps to moisturize the skin. So the body naturally produces this hyaluronic acid and it attracts 1,000 times its volume in water. So essentially what you're doing is you're drawing hydration into the deep connective tissues in the fascia. You're repairing the scar tissue and the adhesions. And for me, I was repairing this injury that had happened, and I started to heal my knee. And then within about 4 to 5 weeks, my knee was completely fine after having gone to see all the doctors. And so naturally, I had this experience where I'm like, whoa, this yin yoga is very, very, very powerful. And all those benefits that I just shared with you, that's just one little slice of the pie. There's a lot more that you'll see and read about in the book. But, you know, I was able to start running. And so having such a strong, visceral, firsthand experience with this almost miraculous healing that the doctors couldn't heal, I started to spread yin yoga. I started to teach it in some of my classes. I started to teach it in teacher trainings, workshops, and retreats. And then eventually I made a yoga DVD set called The Ultimate Yogi that became really popular. And in that DVD set, because it has a lot of strong power yoga in there, I wanted to make sure that you would do like 3 days really strong yoga, and then you would have like a really chill, relaxed day, which is similar to some of the weightlifting philosophy, like 3 days strong, 1 day off. And so the day off was the yin yoga. So we filmed a yin yoga for the Ultimate Yogi. And because of the popularity of the Ultimate Yogi, a lot of people got introduced to yin yoga for the first time. And, you know, it's one of those things that people usually hate when they do it the first time. Because it's different than how we live our lives, right? Like we live our lives rushing and racing and bouncing from one thing to the next, always going, always doing. And yin yoga is the opposite. You're getting still. So whatever it is that you're running away from, it gets to catch up with you. And that can be very, very confronting. So it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength to do these practices of yin yoga or meditation, because we got to be with ourselves. And we got to get intimate with ourselves. And yin yoga and meditation is like a mirror. So whatever you got going on, that mirror is going to reflect to you whatever's happening. And if you got good stuff going on, it'll reflect that. If you have challenging stuff, it'll reflect that. If you have neutral stuff, it'll reflect that. But it'll reflect that. So, you know, I got a lot of feedback from people that were like, look, I hated the yin yoga practice. And I get it, you know, like it's challenging to be in those poses, not only physically, but also mentally. But what started to happen is that people stuck with it and they started to experience the same kind of transformations. And I started getting emails and letters from all sorts of people that, you know, told me that, you know, the Ultimate Yogi and the Yin Yoga really transformed their lives and helped to heal them. started getting notes from professional athletes. Some of them are in the book. Like we do a little conversation, short conversation with some notable people at the end of each chapter. You know, people like A.J. Pollock, all-star baseball player for Arizona Diamondbacks, just won in the month of April National League Baseball Player of the Year. Shot me a message and said that the Yin Yoga was making him a much better baseball player. And so he came to, play the Dodgers and invited me and my wife, Lauren, to, come to the game. And we got to go down onto the field and meet all the team. And AJ was spreading the Yin Yoga to his teammates and to his coaches. One of his teammates, Paul Goldschmidt, is America's all-star first baseman. And, Goldie said the same thing. And he said, he'd go see his massage therapists and body workers. And after he'd been doing the Yin Yoga, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, something's changed within the fascia of your body. You have more suppleness. You have more mobility. What are you doing? And he's like, I've been doing this Yin Yoga. AJ also got, at that time, their third base coachman, a guy named Matt Williams, who won with the Arizona Diamondbacks in the World Series back in the day. He got him doing it. And Matt Williams was really appreciative of it because he was saying that it was helping him to get young again. You know, the Yin Yoga is often called the fountain of youth because it restores youthfulness within our body. We reach a certain age within our life. If we're not doing any sort of stretching or yin, your muscles start to atrophy, things start to lock up and seize up, you start losing mobility, bacteria gets trapped in your fascia. You know, it's like you're not removing the waste and the toxins out of one of the most important tissue systems in the body, and things just start to go downhill fast. So when you do the yin, it keeps that circulation within the fascial system. So Matt Williams ended up getting hired to go be the head coach at Washington Nationals for a couple of years. And one day I was reading this article and it said, new head coach Matt Williams has the whole Nationals team doing yoga now. And so this is just kind of how it spreads. And I'll finish with one last little story that I actually haven't told in public yet because it's new and it's also a little intense. So just a little heads up. But what the story speaks to is the power of this beyond just the physical stuff. So several weeks ago, I got invited to teach at a prison in Maine. And so it's the maximum security prison where all the bad guys go, the murderers and, elevated, aggravated assault, like you name it, really, really bad stuff that's happened there. But I had been invited to come teach at this prison along with my wife. And so my wife and I like to do things, especially as we get deeper into our career, that are being of service to people, and it's not about the money, to just go and give back. They say that the key to living is growing and giving. So if you're growing every day and you're giving every day, you're going to live a good life. So we went to this prison, and as soon as I walked into the door, this man yelled out at me in the lobby, said, "Travis Eliot?" And I'm in the middle of bumfuck Maine. I'm like, how does this guy know me? Well, this guy ended up being the warden of the whole entire prison. And he said, "We're so happy to have you here. We use your ultimate yogi videos throughout the prison, and we even use them in solitary confinement to help the guys out." So he went on to introduce me to this guy, and before I had met the guy, he said that this particular prisoner was the worst prisoner in the entire complex out of 1,000 prisoners, the most misbehaved prisoner, and so he got thrown into solitary confinement. And so he introduced me to this guy, and I'll call him M for short. And when I met M, he had tattoos all across his neck with the word war written across. And the A was an anarchy sign. And he had a huge scar that ran all the way across the left side of his face, all the way from his temple down towards his cheek. So pretty intense looking dude. And he shared his story with me, and he told me that he had done some bad things in prison, and so he got thrown into solitary confinement. And when he got thrown into solitary confinement, he tried to kill himself. And so he took a razor and he tried to cut an artery, which is why he had the big scar on the side of his face. And when that didn't work, he tried swallowing the razors. And after that had happened, they had to take him to the hospital because he was really close to losing his life. So after he recovered and they put him back into solitary confinement, there he was in his cell, and on the side of the cell, they have this computer monitor behind this like bulletproof plexiglass stuff so that it's protected, and then there's a mouse. And in the computer system on the screen was the ultimate yogi. And so something within him told him to do one of the classes from the ultimate yogi, and as fate would have it, he chose to do the yin yoga practice from the ultimate yogi. And so he did the yin practice, and in the middle of the yin practice, he had this little revelation. It was like a tiny little light within the darkest of dark despair. And this light for him represented hope. Because this guy had grown up and he had never heard what was said on the yoga DVDs. He had never been loved. He had never been around a positive message and around positive people. And so it was like a whole new world for him. You know, a lot of us, we take that for granted. But for him, you know, he never had that. And so that little experience told him that there was hope, and to, one, not try to kill himself, and two, to do the 108-day yoga program. And so he went on to do it, and he didn't have a yoga mat, and, you know, everybody in the videos, all the students on their mats, the word ultimate is written across the top of the mat. It's this whole like be ultimate theme. And so what he did was he took the razor, and instead of trying to kill himself, he carved the word ultimate into the concrete floor. And then he carved out, you know, the size of a yoga mat with a razor. So he'd created this little jail cell ultimate yoga mat. And he went on and he did the whole 108-day program. And by the time he finished the program, he had been completely transformed. He was a whole different person. And then soon after that, a guy got thrown into solitary right across the hall from him, and he was about to kill himself. And this guy, M, stopped B from killing himself and said, do the yoga videos, do the yoga practice. And so B ended up doing the same thing. And I got to meet B as well. So B had a really, really hard time when he was in solitary as well. And so we taught 2 days straight in this prison. We taught 8 hours on a Monday and then 9 hours on a Tuesday. And the whole entire time, like, we were with 17 guys doing yoga workshops. And at the end of those 2 days, we were asked by the warden and by M and B to go back to solitary confinement so that B could complete his circle of healing. So as we're walking deeper into the prison system, they give you these boxes that look like kind of like a pager and has a big red button on it. It's called a man down button. And so if something happens, you press that red button and then they flock in to rescue you. So we're walking deeper and deeper into the prison system, and as we're going in there, these guards are coming out, and these guards are like fully, military, like the guns and the big like bulletproof gear and like everything, like full on, like out of a video game. And they're coming out, we're going in, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, aren't you supposed to be going the same direction as us? So eventually, after going through about 16 of these doors, we went into what they call the belly of the beast, which is the solitary confinement. And we got introduced to the prison guard that monitors and is the head of charge of that particular part of the prison. And he escorted me, Lauren, B, and M all the way to the end of this hallway to where B's jail cell used to be. And the four of us went in the cell. We all sat down, and I asked B, I said, so what do you want to do? Do you want to pray? You want to say a prayer? Or do you want to meditate? And he said, well, I don't know about praying, but maybe let's meditate. And so that's what we did. We took about 10 minutes, the four of us, and we just meditated. We dropped into the stillness. And then when we came out, I came out, Lauren came out, M came out, but B was so deep in his meditation, he was like in another world, and M had to knock him on the shoulder to like jolt him out of this trance that he was in. And after that, we left, and as we were walking down the corridor, B looked at me with tears in his eyes and his lip quivering, and he said, I'll never forget this day. And I'll share this story for the rest of my life to my family. And me and this big, huge dude hugging it out with him. And I left that prison, and I wasn't the same person that I was when I went in that prison. And what's so powerful about it is that it's all because of these teachings and these practices. If this person that's a criminal, that's not only just a criminal, but one of the worst criminals in a maximum security prison, can transform all because of a yin yoga practice, what's capable within our lives? What's possible within our lives? So it's bigger than just this physical scope. It's so much bigger than that, and it's so much deeper than that. I didn't have that experience until after I'd written the book, so that story's not in the book. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, to hopefully just give you some context, as to the power of these teachings. These teachings are so, so incredibly powerful, and it may not be easy. You may not even enjoy what we're about to do. But I learned early on in my yoga path that the things I resisted the most were the things that I actually needed the most. That the resistance is a sign that there's something there for you to investigate. And so instead of running away or pushing it away or checking out or getting distracted, like to be with it and breathe through it and watch it and observe it. And as Joseph Campbell says, the cave that you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek. So when we move through the fear or the discomfort or the challenge or what's confrontational, when we move through that other side, we come out the other side in a whole new paradigm. So let's begin.